You already know the pineal gland exists. You've heard it calcifies. Maybe you've even started some cleansing protocol. But here's the question that really matters. The question that will determine whether you actually commit or quit halfway through. Why? Why does this matter? Why invest time, money, effort in decalcifying a tiny gland that conventional medicine barely acknowledges? Because without understanding the real, deep, visceral importance of having a functioning pineal, you won't persevere. You'll take the supplements for a week and stop. You'll do the practices for a few days and forget. You'll go back to drinking fluoridated water because, what difference does it make? And your gland will recalcify, and your vision will close again, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been different. But if you understand, truly understand, what's at stake here, what you gain with an active pineal and what you lose keeping it calcified, then there's no force in the world that will make you quit. Because you'll realize this isn't just about abstract spirituality. It's not just about opening the third eye as some vague mystical concept. It's about freedom. It's about power. It's about the difference between living as an unconscious prisoner and living as a complete human being. The pineal gland isn't a spiritual accessory. It's not a luxury for people who like esotericism. It's an essential organ that was systematically deactivated in all of humanity because, when it functions, you become uncontrollable. And there are forces, call them archons, power systems, control structures, that absolutely depend on your inability to see clearly. So let's be very direct about what's happening here. Your calcified pineal isn't a natural accident. It's not, everyone ages like this. It's the result of intentional, prolonged, meticulously executed poisoning since the day you were born. And the reason for so much effort, so much investment in keeping you blind is simple. You with a functioning pineal are an existential threat to every system based on lies, fear, and manipulation. When your pineal is active, you see through propaganda instantly. You recognize lies before the person finishes speaking. You perceive emotional manipulation as it happens. You know when they're trying to sell you something you don't need, make you fear something that's not a real threat, convince you to obey something that makes no sense. And most importantly, you perceive that reality is far vaster, far richer, far fuller of possibilities than they told you. And that's exactly what they can't allow. Because control systems work through limited perception. If you only see the material world, only believe what the five senses capture, only trust external authorities to tell you what's real, then you're controllable, predictable, manipulable. But if you develop direct perception, if you access dimensions beyond matter, if you know things without needing anyone to teach you, then you go off script, and people off script are dangerous. So here's what this video will do. It will show you exactly what you gain when you clean the pineal. Not in vague, mystical terms, but in practical, concrete, measurable terms. How your life changes, what you become capable of doing, what you stop tolerating, how your relationships change, how your work changes, how your understanding of reality, time, death, purpose changes completely. And it will also show you what you lose keeping it calcified. Not just, you won't have cool spiritual experiences, but the real cost of living blind. The bad decisions you make because you don't perceive manipulation. The toxic relationships you maintain because you don't feel energy clearly. The time you waste pursuing things that will never satisfy you because you don't know what you really want. The entire life that passes without you ever discovering who you really are. Because here's the brutal truth. Most people die without ever having used the pineal. They live 80, 90 years with this gland completely inactive. And when they die confused, disoriented, vulnerable, and they're captured, manipulated to reincarnate, to return to the material prison, to do it all again, because they didn't see clearly enough to recognize the exit. But when you clean the pineal, when you activate it completely, when you live with full spiritual perception, death is no longer a scary mystery. You've already experienced non-physical dimensions. You've already been conscious outside the body. You already know you're not the body, not the mind, but consciousness using both. And when it's time to leave, you know exactly where to go. You see true light. You recognize the trap. You exit. That's the importance. It's not about having cool dreams. It's not about impressing friends with mystical perceptions. It's about not spending eternity trapped in a cycle you don't even perceive as a prison. It's about real freedom. Freedom that crosses death and continues on the other side. So if you're still wondering, is the decalcification protocol worth it? This video will answer so clearly, so undeniably, that you won't be able to continue living as you are. You'll realize that not cleaning the pineal isn't an option. It's surrender. It's accepting to live as a slave who doesn't even know they're a slave. And once you see that, once you truly understand what's at stake, there's no going back. You commit, you clean the gland, you recover your vision, and you never again accept living blind. Ready to understand why this matters more than anything else you've ever done in your life? Then let's begin. What you lose. Living blind. Life with a calcified pineal. Let's start with the dark side, with what you don't perceive when you're living with a calcified pineal. Because the biggest trap of spiritual blindness is that you don't know you're blind. You think you're seeing everything, that your perception is complete, that the reality you experience is all of reality. And it's exactly that illusion of completeness that keeps you trapped. Imagine someone who was born without one of the five senses, let's say without smell. That person grows up in a reality where scents don't exist. They don't miss them. They're simply not there. And they live perfectly well, adapted, functional. But they're missing an entire dimension of human experience and don't even know it. They can't miss what they never had. They can't seek what they don't know exists. Now imagine that person, at 30 years old, suddenly gains smell. Suddenly can smell flower perfume, rain approaching, food being prepared, the fragrance of someone they love. And in that moment, they realize they spent 30 years living in a diminished version of reality. They weren't complete, they were limited, and they didn't even know. That's exactly what happens with a calcified pineal. You're living without one of your senses. But it's not a physical sense. It's a spiritual sense. It's the ability to perceive frequencies beyond matter, dimensions beyond the physical, truths beyond what they tell you. And when you live without this since childhood, you don't miss it. You think everyone sees what you see, that reality is exactly as it appears, that there's nothing beyond. But there is, and you're missing it. First, you lose immediate discernment. When your pineal doesn't function, you depend on mental analysis for everything. Someone tells you a story and you need to think, does this make sense logically? Do the pieces fit? Does this person have reason to lie? And while you're processing all this mentally, you can be deceived. Because skilled liars construct logical narratives. Manipulators know how to make the pieces fit. And if you only have logic to work with, you're vulnerable. But when the pineal functions, you know before thinking. The person starts speaking and you feel lie. Not because you analyzed, because you perceived. The frequency is wrong, the energy doesn't match, and you might not even know specifically where the lie is, but you know it's there, and that protects you from scammers, from manipulators, from relationships based on falsehood, from offers that seem good but are traps. Second, you lose the ability to read energy. You enter an environment and feel nothing. It could be a place loaded with negativity, trauma, parasitic entities, but you don't perceive it. You just feel a vague discomfort you ignore. You meet a person and don't pick up their vibe. They could be an emotional predator, energy vampire, narcissist masked as charismatic, but you don't detect it. You only notice when you're already involved, when you've already given power, when you've already been drained. And relationships? You choose based on appearances, on how the person presents themselves, on what they say, on the promises they make, because you can't feel who they really are beneath the social mask. So you marry someone, and 5 years later discover you never knew the real person. Or you maintain friendships that suck you dry because you don't perceive that every interaction leaves you exhausted. Or you trust those you shouldn't and are repeatedly betrayed. Third, you lose connection with synchronicity. Your life seems random. Coincidences happen, but you see no pattern. You miss opportunities because you didn't perceive the signs. You ignore warnings because you didn't recognize they were warnings. And you stay stuck in bad situations for years because you didn't catch the 10, 20, 50 synchronicities showing you the exit. Reality is constantly communicating with you. Through coincidences, through seemingly casual encounters, through numbers you see repeatedly, through dreams containing information, through sensations guiding you. But with a calcified pineal, you're deaf to that communication. You live in a universe that seems dead, mechanical, without intelligence, when in fact it's alive, responsive, trying to help you all the time. You just can't hear. Fourth, You lose access to intuition, that knowledge that comes without reasoning, that certainty without logical explanation but is correct. So you make decisions based only on rational analysis. And rational analysis is limited. It only works with information you consciously have. It doesn't access the larger information field. It doesn't catch what you know, but don't know you know. How many times have you ignored a feeling and regretted it later? I knew I shouldn't have done that. Something warned me, but I didn't listen. That's the pineal trying to function through the calcification, sending weak, muffled signals. And you ignore them because you trust logic more. Because intuition without an active pineal is too weak to compete with mental noise. Fifth, you lose the ability to access altered states of consciousness naturally. Your consciousness gets trapped in the common waking state, awake or asleep, nothing in between, nothing beyond. So you never experience expansion, never feel union with everything, never access wisdom coming from dimensions beyond mind. You live entirely inside the box of common perception and think the box is the entire universe. Sixth, you lose meaningful dreams. You sleep and either don't dream or dream random fragments that make no sense. Waking up remembering vivid, coherent dreams full of symbolism and teaching, that requires a functioning pineal, because it's the pineal that produces DMT during deep sleep, and DMT is the visionary molecule. It's what opens perception to dream dimensions where you can learn, meet guides, receive information, process deep trauma. Without that, sleep is just physical rest. You lose 8 hours a day, a third of life, that could be used for spiritual growth, for healing, for exploration of realities beyond the material. You waste a third of existence in blank when you could be living experiences as rich as waking life. Seventh, you lose clarity about purpose. You don't know why you're here. You live doing what society says you should do. You study to get a job. You work to pay bills. You accumulate things. You seek status. You try to impress people. And deep down you feel empty. You feel you're wasting time, that you should be doing something more. But what? You don't know. Because without an active pineal, you don't access deep memory. You don't remember what you came to do here. You don't recognize your mission. Eighth, you lose true creativity. Your ideas come from what you've already seen, already learned, already been exposed to. Recombination of existing. But real innovation, genuine insight, inspiration coming from a place beyond mind, that requires access to non-local information field, and that access passes through the pineal. So you remain limited to derivative creativity while you could be channeling something totally new. Ninth, you lose the ability to heal yourself energetically. When you get sick, you only have external medicine, remedies, surgeries, treatments. But what about the body's ability to self-heal when you direct consciousness and energy where needed? That exists, but it requires energetic perception, requires feeling where the blockage is, the imbalance, the stagnation. And without an active pineal, you're blind to your own energy. You depend totally on external healing systems. 10th, and perhaps most important, you lose the ability to prepare for death. You spend your whole life without experiencing states beyond the body, without knowing that consciousness continues when the body stops. So when death comes, you're terrified, desperate, attached, and that state of fear and attachment makes you vulnerable to post-death manipulation. Entities presenting as light but aren't. Promises of reunion with loved ones if you come back. Manipulation to make you reincarnate without conscious choice. But if you lived with an active pineal, death isn't a leap into the unknown. You've already been out of body. You already know you're not the body. You've already experienced continuity of consciousness beyond physical form. So when the time comes, you're calm, prepared, conscious, and you can navigate the transition with clarity, recognize the traps, and make real choices about what comes next. So here's the brutal summary of what you lose with a calcified pineal. You lose the ability to live as a complete human being. You live as a diminished version of yourself. And worst of all, you don't know you're diminished. You think it's like this for everyone, that life is just like this, limited, confused, without magic, without mystery, without dimensions beyond what's seen, and you die without ever having truly lived, without ever having used the complete equipment that came with this body, without ever having experienced all of reality, just a piece, a slice, a shadow of what could have been. That's what you lose. And now let's see what you gain when you clean the gland and finally see. What you gain: seeing clearly, life with an active pineal. Now the other side. What changes when you clean the calcification and the gland finally functions? And we're not talking about subtle changes you need faith to believe are happening. We're talking about transformations so obvious, so dramatic, so impossible to ignore that your life divides into before and after. First, instant discernment. You develop an internal lie detector that never fails. Someone starts speaking and you know, immediately, whether it's truth or not. Not because you analyzed the story, not because you checked facts, but because you felt. The frequency of truth is different from the frequency of lies. And with an active pineal, you read frequencies like other people read words. This changes everything. You stop being deceived. You stop falling for emotional cons. You stop believing propaganda. You stop buying products you don't need because someone convinced you that you need them. You stop voting for politicians who lie. You stop following gurus who are selling illusion. You stop trusting people who say one thing and do another. And this doesn't make you cynical. It makes you free, because you also recognize truth when you see it. You know when someone is being genuine, when an opportunity is real, when a teaching comes from true experience and not from ego-wanting followers. And you can trust what you feel because your perception is calibrated. Second, direct energy reading. You enter an environment and instantly know how it is. Heavy, light, loaded with fear, full of joy. You don't need to stay there 15 minutes to feel the vibe. You feel it in 3 seconds, and you can choose to stay or leave based on real information, not supposition. People, same thing. You look at someone and pick up the energy. Is this person open or closed? Lying or being honest? Energized or drained? Safe or dangerous? And you know before exchanging a word, before investing time, before getting emotionally involved. Imagine never again entering a toxic relationship because you felt the energetic red flag before you even liked the person. Imagine never again staying trapped in a friendship that drains you because you perceived in the first conversation that this person depletes. Imagine choosing partners, friends, colleagues, collaborators based on real energetic compatibility, not superficial attraction or social convenience. Third, synchronicity becomes normal language. You begin to perceive that reality is constantly organizing itself around you in meaningful ways. You think of someone, the person calls. You need information. Someone mentions exactly that. You're thinking about changing direction, and 3 different signs confirm the same thing. And you no longer dismiss these occurrences as just coincidence. You recognize their communication, reality responding to your consciousness, the universe collaborating, and you learn to work with this. To ask questions and observe the answers, to request guidance and recognize when it comes, to navigate life not just with rational planning, but with intuitive flow. Your life stops being a struggle against random circumstances and becomes a dance with greater intelligence. You still act, still choose, still work, but there's a sense of being supported, of being on the right path, that when you go in the right direction, doors open. And when you go in the wrong direction, obstacles appear to redirect you. Fourth, intuition becomes a reliable guide. That silent knowledge that comes without words. That certainty without logic, but is always correct. With an active pineal, you have constant access to this, and you learn to trust, to follow, to act based on feeling even when the mind says, "This makes no sense." And you discover that intuition takes you to places logic never would, to opportunities you didn't know existed, to people who change your life, to decisions that seem risky but turn out perfect. Because intuition isn't limited to what you consciously know. It accesses information from the entire field, past, present, future, parallel, all available at once. So you stop making decisions just with your head. You consult intuition. You feel in the body. You observe the signs. And you act with confidence because you know you're being guided by something greater than ego, greater than fear, greater than social conditioning. Fifth, access to expanded states of consciousness. You no longer need external substances to get out of the box of common perception. The pineal produces DMT naturally, and with it functioning, you have access to altered states through meditation, through breathing practices, through fasting, through simply being present in a certain way. And in those states, you experience things that completely transform your understanding of reality. Union with everything, dissolution of ego, perception of dimensions beyond the physical, encounters with non-physical consciousnesses, access to wisdom that doesn't come from books or teachers but from direct connection with Source. And these experiences aren't trips you forget afterward. They're revelations that change who you are, that expand your capacity, that show you that you're much more than body, much more than personality, much more than this specific life. And once you know this experientially, fear diminishes, attachment diminishes. You relax into life in a way you never could before. Sixth, dreams become night school. Every night when you sleep, you don't just rest. You travel, you learn, you process, you heal. Dreams stop being confused fragments and become coherent experiences in other dimensions. You meet teachers, receive teachings, explore alternative realities, work on deep issues that during the day are buried, and you wake up remembering, in detail, and you bring information back, insights about problems you were facing, creative solutions you wouldn't have thought of awake, understandings about relationships, about yourself, about life. A third of your time that was previously wasted in blank is now used for active growth. Seventh, clarity about purpose. You begin to know why you're here, not because someone told you, not because you read in a book, but because you remember. The active pineal gives you access to memories beyond this life, to the plan you made before incarnating, to the talents you brought, to the mission you chose. And suddenly, that existential emptiness disappears. That feeling of wasting time doing meaningless things disappears, because you know what you came to do, and you can align your daily choices with that. You can say no to what diverts you. You can say yes to what brings you closer. You can live with a sense of direction that comes from within, not from external expectations. Eighth, explosive creativity. Ideas start coming from a place beyond mind. You're doing something mundane, washing dishes, driving, walking, and suddenly, insight. Complete solution to a problem you'd been racking your brain over for weeks. Totally new concept you've never seen anywhere. Connection between seemingly unrelated things that opens an entire possibility, and you realize you're not thinking better, you're receiving, channeling, accessing creative intelligence that exists beyond your individual brain. And the more you use this, the more it flows. Artists create masterpieces. Scientists have breakthroughs. Ordinary people solve problems in brilliant ways, because everyone has access to the same source. They just need the antenna working. Ninth, capacity for energetic self-healing. You learn to feel your own energy, where it's blocked, where it's stagnant, where it's leaking, and you learn to work with this, to direct consciousness and breath where needed, to dissolve blockages, to rebalance chakras, to restore flow, and illnesses that used to last weeks resolve in days. Chronic pains you thought you'd have forever disappear when you remove the energetic blockage that caused them. You can still use external medicine when necessary, but you also have internal medicine, and many times it's enough. 10th, conscious preparation for death. You live knowing you're not the body, because you've already been outside it, multiple times, in deep meditation, in lucid dreams, in spontaneous expansion experiences, and you know, without a shadow of doubt, that consciousness continues when physical form stops. So when it's time to die, and it will come for everyone, you're not terrified. You're prepared. You know what to expect. You know how to navigate. You recognize traps. You recognize true light. And you can make conscious choice about what comes next. You're not captured. You're not manipulated. You exit the wheel or choose to return. But it's choice, not unconscious compulsion. And this changes how you live too. Because when you don't fear death, you have much less fear of life. You stop avoiding risks out of fear of loss. You stop desperately clinging to things because you know nothing here is permanent. You stop living in constant survival mode and begin to truly live, explore, create, love, experience. Because you know this is a game, a school, an adventure. Not all that exists. So here's the summary of what you gain with an active pineal. You gain the entire life. The complete life, the life you should have been living all along. You become who you really are. You use the complete equipment. You see all of reality, and you live each day with perception, with purpose, with power, with presence that most people never experience. And once you taste this, once you live like this for a few months, you never want to go back, because you finally know what it is to be truly alive. The difference between prisoner and free. How the pineal determines your level of control. Now let's talk about something most people don't want to admit. You're being controlled. Not by conspirators in dark rooms, though they exist, but by something far more subtle and far more effective. You're being controlled by your own limited perception. And the calcified pineal gland is the #1 tool ensuring you never perceive the prison. Let's be direct about how control works. You don't need armed guards when you can make people believe the prison is the entire world. You don't need chains when you can make people think there's nowhere to go. And you don't need threats when you can make people so afraid of leaving their comfort zone that they imprison themselves. And the key to all of this? Limited perception. If you only see the material world, only believe what authorities tell you, only trust established systems, then you're predictable. You'll do what they expect you to do. You'll want what they teach you to want. You'll fear what they condition you to fear. The calcified pineal guarantees this limitation. Because when it doesn't function, you depend on external sources for everything. For information, for validation, for direction. And whoever controls the external sources controls you. Media says something is true, you believe. Government says something is necessary, you obey. Corporation says you need a product, you buy. Religion says what God wants, you follow. Not because you're stupid, but because you don't have access to direct truth. You have no way to check. You have no internal perception that confirms or contradicts what they tell you. So you assume people with authority know more, that experts are right, that the system is there to protect you. And maybe it is, or maybe it isn't. But you can't know for sure because your antenna is broken. You're blind being led by someone who claims they can see, and you have to trust, because you have no choice. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine having a functioning pineal. Someone on TV says something and you feel, lie. Not because you checked facts, because you perceived the frequency is wrong. Politician makes a promise and you know, won't keep it. Not because you're cynical, because you read their energy and saw there's no genuine intention there. Corporation tries to sell you fear. Buy this or something bad will happen. And you recognize the manipulation instantly. You don't fall for it, you don't buy, because you see through it. Religion says obey or go to hell, and you perceive its control, not love, not spiritual truth, but power system disguised as salvation. And suddenly you're no longer controllable, because control depends on you not perceiving you're being manipulated, depends on you believing the narrative they sell you is objective reality. But when you see through everything, when you feel manipulation before it reaches you, you go off script. And people off script are any control system's worst nightmare. Let's be specific about how this works in practice. Propaganda works by creating emotional associations. Product X, cheer status. Product Y, cheer love. Product Z, cheer security. And your brain, seeing these associations repeated 1,000 times, starts believing. So you buy not because you need, but because you've been conditioned to feel that product solves something emotional. But with an active pineal, you see the engineering. You see the attempt to create artificial association. And it doesn't work on you, because you feel the falseness. You feel they're trying to implant desire that's not yours, and you simply don't buy. Literally, you don't spend money, don't give energy, don't participate in the game. Politics works by creating division. Us versus them. If you're not with us, you're against us. And people with limited perception fall for this because they only see two sides. So they choose a side and defend it like it's life or death. And they stay so busy fighting the other side that they don't notice both sides serve the same system, that the division is manufactured to distract. But with an active pineal, you see the strategy. You see they're giving you a choice between A and B while hiding options C, D, E, F that would actually change something. And you don't fall for it. You don't identify with either manufactured side. You think for yourself. You choose based on truth, not team. Institutional religion works by creating fear and dependency. You're a sinner. You need salvation. And salvation only comes through specific authority that interprets sacred text for you. So you hand over your power. You obey. You donate money. You follow rules. Because you fear what happens if you don't. But with an active pineal, you have direct access to spiritual dimensions. You don't need an intermediary. You experience the divine directly. And you realize most institutional religions took original teachings of spiritual freedom and turned them into control systems, kept the ritual, killed the experience. So you free yourself, not necessarily abandoning spirituality, but abandoning control disguised as spirituality. Medicine works by creating dependency on external intervention. You get sick, you need a specialist to diagnose, prescribe, cure, and you assume your body is a broken machine that needs a technician, that you have no knowledge or power to heal yourself, that health comes from pills, not internal balance. But with an active pineal, you feel your own body. You know when something is imbalanced before it becomes serious illness. You can work energetically to restore flow. You can use external medicine when necessary, but not as the only option. You have internal power, and that removes you from complete dependency on a medical system that profits from you being sick. Education works by teaching you to memorize, not think, to repeat, not question, to accept authority, not validate through your own experience. So you leave school knowing facts but not knowing how to access direct wisdom, dependent on experts to tell you what's true. But with an active pineal, you have access to intuitive knowledge, to wisdom coming from connection with the larger field. You still learn from external sources, but you validate internally. You don't accept anything just because authority said so. You test, you feel, you confirm, and you develop your own understanding, not a regurgitated version of what they taught you. See the pattern? Every control system depends on you not having access to direct perception, depends on you needing an external source to tell you what's real, what's true, what's right. And as long as you need that, you can be controlled, because whoever controls the sources controls you. But when the pineal functions, you have internal validation, you have direct access, you have perception that doesn't depend on anyone telling you anything, and that's freedom, real freedom. Not freedom to do what you want within permitted rules, but freedom to see the rules, understand why they exist, and consciously choose which to follow and which to reject. And here's the most important part. Control systems know this. They know a person with an active pineal is uncontrollable. That's why the massive investment in calcification. Fluoride in public water isn't an accident. It's not just dental health. It's a long-term strategy to keep the population with limited perception, to keep people dependent on external authority, to guarantee obedience through blindness. You think that's paranoia? Then explain why fluoride is added to water in developed countries but banned in many European countries. Explain why studies show massive fluoride accumulation specifically in the pineal gland. Explain why the same substance that calcifies the pineal is promoted as essential for public health. Either you accept the official narrative without questioning, proving the control works, or you realize something's very wrong here and start investigating, proving your pineal still has enough function to make you question. And once you question, once you see they went to such lengths to keep you blind, you can't ignore it anymore. You realize decalcifying the pineal isn't spiritual whimsy. It's an act of resistance. It's refusing to participate in your own enslavement. It's deciding to exit the matrix. And when you clean the gland, when you recover direct perception, you don't just see through individual manipulations. You see the whole system. You see how it all connects, how education prepares you to obey, how media keeps you distracted, how economy keeps you desperate, how religion keeps you guilty, how politics keeps you divided, how medicine keeps you dependent. And you see the exit, not by destroying the system. It will fall on its own when enough people wake up, but simply by not participating, not giving energy, not blindly obeying, living in ways that don't depend on a system that wants to control you. That's the difference between prisoner and free. The prisoner doesn't know they're imprisoned. They think the cell bars are natural limits of reality. The free person sees the bars, understands their constructs, and exits, not with anger, not with struggle, but simply by seeing through and choosing differently. And it all starts with the pineal, because it's the key. It's the tool that gives you perception. And perception is power. Power that no system can take from you once you have it. Power that transforms you from a piece on the board to a conscious player, from slave to free human being. So when someone asks, why is cleaning the pineal important? The answer is simple. Because you can't be free while you're blind, and you can't see while your antenna is broken. Decalcifying is fixing the antenna. And once you see, you never again accept living as a prisoner who doesn't even know they're imprisoned. The cost of ignorance. What happens when you die with a calcified pineal? Let's talk about something most people avoid thinking about until it's too late. What happens when you die? And specifically, what happens when you die without ever having activated the pineal gland? Because here's the brutal truth no one wants to hear. Calcification doesn't kill you. It traps you. and the prison continues after the body stops. You lived your entire life without direct spiritual perception, without out-of-body experiences, without access to non-physical dimensions. So when death comes, you have no reference. You've never been conscious without a body before, never navigated realities beyond the material, never encountered non-physical entities. All of this is completely new, terrifying, disorienting, and in that state of confusion and fear, you're extremely vulnerable, because death isn't the end of consciousness. It's a transition, and like any transition, it can be navigated with wisdom, or it can be navigated in panic. People with active pineals navigate with wisdom, because they've already been there, they've already practiced, they already know what to expect. But you're completely unprepared. So let's detail exactly what happens. Your body stops functioning, your heart stops beating, your breath ceases, and suddenly you realize you're still conscious, still thinking, still existing, but you have no body. And this should be impossible because they taught you your whole life that consciousness is a product of the brain, that when the brain dies, you cease to exist. But you didn't, and now you're floating above the body, seeing it from outside, seeing people around reacting and thinking, this can't be happening. Denial, confusion, maybe even attempts to return to the body, but it doesn't work. The body is dead, and you're not. Then comes fear, pure panic. What's happening? Where am I going? What will become of me? And in that state of intense fear, you begin to perceive you're not alone. There are presences, entities. Some present themselves as light, as angels, as spirit guides, as loved ones who died before you. And you, desperate for guidance, for comfort, for anything that makes sense. Trust, because you have no discernment, because you never developed spiritual perception. Because your pineal was calcified your whole life, so you never learned to differentiate between true light and false light, between genuine guide and trap architect. Gnostic texts call these entities archons, not as demons with horns, but as forces that benefit from keeping consciousnesses trapped in the reincarnation cycle. And they're extremely skilled at manipulation, because they've done this millions of times. They know exactly what to say, how to seem benevolent, how to gain your trust. They show you life review, moments where you failed, hurt someone, made bad choices, and they make you feel massive guilt. You need to go back. You need to fix what you broke. You need to learn the lessons you didn't learn. You need to evolve more. And you, feeling the weight of guilt, agree. Yes, I need to go back. I need to do better. Or they show you loved ones. Your mother is waiting for you on the other side. But first you need to go through some things. You need to reincarnate one more time to complete the cycle, and then you can reunite with her. And you, desperate to see someone you love, accept. Okay, I'll go back. Just one more time. Or they show you, important mission. You're a special soul. You have important work to do on Earth. You need to go back to help humanity, to teach, to heal, to serve. And you, wanting to feel your existence has purpose, embark. Yes, I have a mission. I need to fulfill it. And in all these scenarios, you're being manipulated, because the premise is false. You don't need to go back. You're not in karmic debt you have to pay. You don't have an obligatory mission. Reincarnation isn't a requirement for evolution. It's a choice, but it's only a choice if you know you can choose. If you have enough clarity to see they're selling you something, but you don't have that, because you never developed spiritual perception, so you accept what they tell you, and you reincarnate. And you return to the same cycle. You're born, you live with a calcified pineal, you die confused, you're manipulated to return, again, 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 eternally. That's the real prison, not life. Life is just one stage of the prison. The true prison is the cycle, and you can't exit the cycle without seeing it's a cycle, and you can't see while you're blind. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine dying with an active pineal. You spent years experiencing out-of-body states. Deep meditations where consciousness separated from form, astral projections where you traveled through non-physical dimensions, lucid dreams where you were completely conscious in dream reality. You practiced, you prepared, so when the body dies, you don't panic, because you've been here hundreds of times. You know consciousness continues. You know how to navigate without physical form. You know you're not the body, never were, just temporarily using it. And when entities appear, you have discernment, you feel their frequency, and you recognize immediately, Is this true light or imitation? Is this genuine guide or manipulator? And you don't fall for traps. You don't accept fabricated guilt. You don't buy narratives of, you need to go back. You see through, and you can make conscious choice. Maybe you choose to reincarnate, but it's choice, based on genuine desire to experience physical form again, not emotional manipulation. Or maybe you choose to exit the cycle completely, to explore dimensions beyond the material, to continue evolution in non-physical forms. The point is, you have choice, because you have clarity, and clarity comes from practice, and practice comes from having the tool working, and the tool is the pineal. Now some will argue, but I can develop spiritual perception after dying. I can learn on the other side. Technically, maybe. But here's the problem. On the other side, you don't have the time and structure you have here. Here, you can practice daily. You can use specific techniques. You can progressively decalcify. You can build skill over years. On the other side, you're in a fluid state, without physical body to anchor practice, without linear time to gradually build skill, and surrounded by entities that have an interest in keeping you confused. Is it possible to gain clarity there? Yes. But it's infinitely harder. It's like trying to learn to swim after you're already drowning versus learning while you're still on dry land. Here, you have advantage. You have a body. You have time. You have techniques. You have protocol. You can clean the calcification. You can activate the gland. You can practice spiritual perception until it becomes second nature. And when it's time to die, you're prepared, completely prepared. And there's another aspect most don't consider: quality of life versus quantity. You can live 80 years with a calcified pineal, die confused, be manipulated to reincarnate, and live another 80 years in the same state, 160 years of spiritual blindness. Or you can live 50 years with an active pineal, die conscious, make free choice, and those 50 years are worth more than the 160 in the other scenario, because you truly lived. You saw complete reality. You experienced dimensions beyond the material. You knew yourself beyond personality. You connected with the divine directly, and when you died, you exited free, not trapped in an infinite cycle of compulsory reincarnation. So what's the cost of ignorance? The cost is eternity. It's spending eons trapped in a cycle you don't even perceive as a prison. It's dying confused and being manipulated back, life after life, without real progress, without real freedom. Just illusion of evolution while you spin on the same wheel. And here's the most tragic part. You don't need this. The exit is available. It always has been. Clean the pineal, develop perception, practice altered states, consciously prepare. It's simple, not easy, but simple. And it's totally under your control, but most don't do it. Why? Because they underestimate the importance. They think, I'll deal with it when I die. Or, if reincarnation is real, I'll figure it out on the other side. Or I don't need to worry about this now, I have time. And then they live distracted, busy, focused on things that seem urgent but aren't important. And they die unprepared. And the cycle continues. Because they didn't understand that preparation can't wait. That death doesn't announce when it's coming. That on the other side, without practice, without clarity, without discernment, you're at the mercy of forces that know exactly how to manipulate you. So here's the question you need to ask yourself now, not when you're dying. Do you want to exit the cycle or keep spinning? Do you want to die conscious or confused? Do you want to make free choices or be manipulated to accept what they tell you? If you want freedom, you need to prepare now. And preparation starts with the pineal, because it's the portal. It's the tool that gives you perception. And perception is the difference between eternal prisoner and free conscious being. The cost of ignorance is everything. Everything. Not just this life, but all the next ones until you finally wake up and realize what you were missing. Don't let that be you. Don't waste more time. Clean the gland. Develop perception. Prepare. Because death will come. For everyone. And when it comes for you, the only question that matters is, will you be ready? The choice between two realities. Why postponing is choosing prison. Now let's talk about something that separates those who truly change from those who just consume information. Action versus procrastination. Because you can watch this video, agree with everything, feel it makes total sense, and still do nothing. And if you choose to do nothing, you're not choosing neutrality. You're choosing calcification. You're choosing blindness. You're choosing prison. Because here's the truth no one wants to hear. There's no middle ground with the pineal. Either you're cleaning it or you're calcifying it. There's no keeping it as is. The modern world is constantly bombarding you with calcifying substances. Fluoride in water, in air, in food, synthetic calcium in everything processed, artificial light disrupting your rhythms, electromagnetic radiation interfering with subtle frequencies, chronic stress depleting magnesium. So if you're not actively decalcifying, you're passively calcifying. Every day that passes without action is a day the gland becomes denser, more blocked, more dysfunctional, and the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to reverse. Not impossible, but harder. Because layers accumulate, deposits consolidate, function progressively decreases. And here's the perverse trick of the mind. It always gives you reasons to wait. I'll start Monday. I'll start after I resolve this situation. I'll start when I have more time. I'll start when I have more money. I'll start when I feel more prepared. And Monday becomes next Monday. Situation resolves, but another arises. Time never appears. Money is never enough. You never feel prepared. And meanwhile, years pass. You age. The pineal calcifies more, and the window of opportunity closes. Not because it's too late in absolute terms, but because the more calcified the gland, the less motivation you have to clean it, the less perception you have that something's wrong, the less energy you have to make difficult changes. It's a vicious cycle. Calcification generates apathy. Apathy prevents action. Lack of action generates more calcification, and you progressively sink into spiritual blindness so slowly you don't notice. Until you're so deep, you don't even remember light exists. So if you still have a spark, if you still feel something's wrong, if you still have the impulse to search, to question, to try something different, that's not an accident. It's your pineal still functioning partially, still sending signals through the calcification, saying, wake up, we're running out of time here. And you need to act while you can still hear those signals, because if you ignore them long enough, the signals will stop. Not because the pineal died completely, but because the calcification became so dense the signals no longer pass through. And then you enter a state of normalcy. You accept life as it is. You stop searching. You stop questioning. You become like most people who live and die without ever perceiving they were blind. Is that what you want? Mediocre existence where you accept limited reality because you don't know more exists? Superficial relationships because you can't feel deep connection? Meaningless work because you have no clarity about purpose? Constant fear of death because you've never experienced consciousness beyond the body? Or do you want extraordinary life, where you see through lies instantly, where you choose people and situations based on real energetic perception, where you do work aligned with deep mission, where you live without fear, because you know consciousness is eternal? Those are the two available realities, and you choose between them not with words, but with actions. Either you start the decalcification protocol today, or you choose limited reality. There's no third option. And here's why it's so important not to wait. Momentum. When you start, when you take the first action, you create momentum. You buy the first supplement. You throw away fluoridated toothpaste. You do the first practice. And each small action makes the next action easier. You build habit. You build commitment. You build identity as someone who's awakening. But if you wait, you lose momentum. The inspiration you feel now will evaporate. Tomorrow you'll feel less motivated. Next week, even less. And a month from now, you'll be back to normal routine, having completely forgotten why this seemed important. And here's the sad part. 5 years from now, you'll watch another video like this, or read another article, or hear another podcast, and you'll feel the same inspiration, the same desire to change. And you'll tell yourself, this time I'll do it. But you won't, because the pattern is established. You're a person who consumes information, not a person who acts. Unless you break the pattern now, today, tonight, by doing one action. It doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be real. Buy a supplement. Mark practice time in your calendar. Research water filters. Anything that's a concrete step toward decalcification, because once you act, something changes in you. You move from intention to manifestation, from I want to change to I'm changing. And that identity shift is crucial, because it's what sustains you when it gets difficult, when detox symptoms arise, when temptation to quit appears, when people around you think you're crazy. You continue not because it's easy, but because you're someone who's committed, someone who started and will finish, someone who saw the importance and decided it's worth any effort. And here's the secret no one tells you. It doesn't stay difficult forever. The first days, first weeks, are most challenging. Changing established habits, facing internal resistance, dealing with detox. But if you get through that, if you persist, it gets easier. The body adapts, the mind accepts, habits establish, and suddenly you're naturally doing what before seemed impossible. And the results? They start appearing, maybe subtle at first. Better sleep, more vivid dreams, small synchronicities, but enough to validate you're on the right path. And as you continue, results intensify. Sharpened perception, clear intuition, synchronicities impossible to ignore, direct spiritual experiences, and at some point, you look back and realize your life changed completely. You're no longer the same person. You don't see the world the same way. You don't relate the same way. You don't live the same way. And you're deeply grateful you had the courage to start when you did. But that only happens if you start. And starting means acting now. Not someday. Not when I'm ready. Now. Because you'll never be completely ready. There will always be a reason to wait. There will always be an excuse. It will always seem like there's a better moment in the future. But the future never arrives. Only now exists. And now is the only real window of opportunity you have. So use it. Make a decision. Make a commitment. Act. And if you need more motivation, think about this. Every day you live with a calcified pineal is a lost day. Not just lost in abstract spiritual terms, but lost in practical, tangible terms. It's a day making decisions based on limited perception. A day you can be manipulated because you don't see through. A day losing opportunities because you didn't feel the signs. A day maintaining toxic relationship because you don't perceive energy. A day living in fear because you don't know you're more than body. Now multiply that by weeks, months, years, decades. How many years have you already lost? How many bad decisions made? How many opportunities missed? How much time wasted on things that don't matter because you lacked clarity about what does? You can't recover that time, but you can stop losing more. You can start now to live with complete perception, with clarity, with purpose, with power. And the sooner you start, the more of your life you live truly awake. So here's the final question of this chapter. Are you going to choose limited reality or expanded reality? Are you going to choose comfortable blindness or challenging vision? Are you going to choose to be controlled or to be free? And more importantly, are you going to make that choice now, with action? Or are you going to postpone one more time and continue in prison? Because postponing is choosing. And every time you postpone, you're saying yes to calcification, yes to limitation, yes to blindness, and no to freedom. So don't postpone. Act today, now, and begin the journey back to who you really are. The domino effect, how your active pineal transforms everything around you. Now let's talk about something you might not be expecting. Decalcifying the pineal isn't just about you. It's not a solitary personal development journey that ends when you reach a certain level. It's a catalyst that transforms everything around you. Your relationships change, your work changes, your family changes, your community changes, and eventually, if enough people do this, the world changes. Because here's what happens when you clean the pineal and start seeing clearly. You stop tolerating falsehood. And this has massive consequences in all areas of life. Relationships based on convenience, on appearances, on codependency, on fear of being alone. All of these crumble. Not because you become cruel, but because you finally feel who people really are, not who they pretend to be. Friend who was always an energy vampire but you didn't perceive because your sensitivity was blocked, now you feel it. Every interaction leaves you drained, and you can't ignore it anymore. So either the person changes, and sometimes your clarity inspires change in them, or the relationship ends. Not with drama, just with honest recognition it's no longer compatible. Romantic partner you chose based on superficial attraction or filling emotional void. Now you see beyond the mask. You see unresolved patterns. You see energetic incompatibility. And you have to make a choice. Work together to evolve the relationship or recognize you're not on the same path and let go with love. And yes, this can be painful. It can mean temporary loneliness while you realign, but it's conscious loneliness. You're alone because you chose authenticity over false companionship. And that conscious loneliness is infinitely better than companionship that diminishes you. drains you, keeps you small. And here's what most don't understand. When you clean your energetic field of toxic relationships, you create space. Space for people who vibrate at your frequency. Genuine people, conscious, awake or awakening. And these people start appearing, not by accident, but because you're emitting a different frequency. And frequency attracts resonant frequency. Suddenly you meet people who understand without you needing to explain, who see what you see, who feel what you feel, and conversations that were previously impossible, because no one around you understood, now flow naturally. You found your tribe, not because you searched in the right place, but because you became the right vibration to attract. Work changes the same way. When your pineal functions, you can't work on something meaningless anymore. You can't sell a product you don't believe in. You can't participate in a system that exploits. You can't pretend you're motivated by something that only pays bills, but kills your soul. So you change. Maybe you change jobs. Maybe you change careers. Maybe you start your own business. Or maybe you stay in the same place, but transform how you operate within it. You bring consciousness. You bring integrity. You refuse to participate in political games, in gossip, in unnecessary competition. And either that inspires change around you, or you're pushed out. But either way, you're aligned. And alignment generates abundance. Not necessarily immediate financial abundance, though it often comes, but abundance of meaning, of purpose, of satisfaction from doing what you came to do. And that internal abundance is more valuable than any amount of money earned doing something that kills part of you every day. Family? That's complicated, because you don't choose family. You were born into it. And often family is where resistance to your awakening is strongest, because they know you as you were. And when you change, when you see differently, when you stop participating in dysfunctional patterns that have been the norm for generations, they feel threatened, not because they're malicious, but because your change exposes what they're unwilling to change. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your freedom highlights their prison. And that's an uncomfortable mirror. So they resist. They try to bring you back. You've changed. You're different. You're getting weird. And they try to shame you back to conformity. But you can't go back. Because once you see, you can't unsee. So you have to set boundaries. Love family, but not absorb dysfunction. Participate in gatherings, but not in drama. Respect differences, but not sacrifice your truth to maintain false peace. And sometimes, surprisingly, your change inspires change in them. Not immediately, but with time. They see you're happier, more centered, more at peace, and they start questioning, what did you do? How did you get there? And then you can share, not forcing, not preaching, but offering the path that worked for you. And some will follow. Not all, but some. And that creates domino effect. You awaken, you inspire another, that other inspires two more, those two inspire four, and progressively, consciousness spreads. And here's why this matters on a larger scale. The world we live in is a reflection of collective consciousness. If most people are spiritually blind, the world reflects blindness. Control systems thrive, manipulation works, fear dominates. But if more people awaken, if more people activate direct perception, the entire system changes. Because control systems depend on critical mass of blindness, depend on majority not questioning, not seeing through, not perceiving manipulation. But when enough people start seeing, control collapses, not through violent revolution, but through peaceful nonconformity. People simply stopping participation, stopping belief, stopping blind obedience. And you might think, but I'm just one person. What difference do I make? You make all the difference. Because you're not just you. Your influence. You affect dozens of people directly, and those dozens affect hundreds, and hundreds affect thousands. It's exponential network effect. And more importantly, you affect the morphogenetic field. When you activate your pineal, when you reach a certain level of consciousness, you don't just change yourself, you make it easier for the next person to do the same. Because consciousness isn't isolated, it's field, and each person who awakens strengthens the field, makes the vibration stronger, makes the path clearer for others to follow. Rupert Sheldrake calls this morphic resonance, the idea that when enough members of a species learn something new, it becomes easier for the rest of the species to learn it too. And this applies to spiritual awakening. The more people clean their pineals, the easier it becomes for the next person to clean. The more people see clearly, the more transparent the veil becomes for everyone. So when you decalcify, you're not just freeing yourself. You're contributing to collective liberation. You're making it easier for your children, for your grandchildren, for future generations. You're actively participating in the evolution of human consciousness. And this isn't spiritual exaggeration. It's recognition that we're all connected, that no one awakens alone, that each one who awakens facilitates the awakening of others, and that if we want a different world, a world based on truth, on freedom, on clear perception, we need to start with ourselves. Because we can't change the system without changing the consciousness that creates the system. And here's the most beautiful part. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to live differently. Live with clarity, with integrity, with perception. And your life becomes demonstration, living testimony that another path is possible. And people will notice, will ask, will want to know your secret. And you can share, not as evangelist forcing belief, but as friend-sharing tool that worked. I cleaned my pineal gland. It changed everything. If you want to know how, I can tell you. Simple as that. And some will laugh, some will ignore, but some will listen, will try, will experience change, and will share with others. And the domino effect continues. So when you ask, why is decalcifying the pineal important? Part of the answer is, because it's not just about you. It's about everyone you touch, about family you influence, about community you inspire, about world you help transform. And transformation happens person by person, gland by gland, awakening by awakening. There's no shortcut, no collective salvation coming from above. There's only individual choice to awaken. And when enough individual choices accumulate, tipping point is reached, and everything changes. Do you want to be part of that? Do you want to contribute to collective awakening? Do you want to leave a legacy that matters? Then start with yourself. Clean your pineal, awaken your perception, live your truth, and trust the rest will follow. Because it will. It always does. It's natural law. Light attracts light. Consciousness attracts consciousness. And each one who awakens makes it easier for the next to awaken, until finally critical mass is reached. And all of humanity sees through the lie, and the prison crumbles. And real freedom becomes possible for everyone. And it starts with you. Today, now, cleaning the gland that gives you vision, because you can't lead others to light if you yourself are blind. But once you see, you become a beacon, and beacons guide others out of darkness. Be the beacon, clean the pineal, and watch the domino effect unfold. So here we are, at the end of another journey of understanding, or more precisely, at the beginning of the journey of action. You learned what you lose living with a calcified pineal: discernment, energetic perception, synchronicity, intuition, expanded states, meaningful dreams, clarity of purpose, true creativity, self-healing, and preparation for death. An entire life wasted in a diminished version of yourself. You learned what you gain when you clean the gland: internal lie detector, direct energetic reading, synchronicity as normal language, intuition as reliable guide, access to expanded states, dreams as night school, crystal clarity about purpose, explosive creativity, self-healing capacity, and conscious preparation for death. The complete life, the life you should be living. You learned the pineal determines your level of control. Calcified, you're controllable because you depend on external sources for truth. Active, you're free because you have direct perception no one can manipulate. You learned the cost of ignorance: dying confused, being manipulated to reincarnate, staying trapped in the cycle eternally, versus dying conscious, making free choice, exiting the wheel when you choose. You learned postponing is choosing. There's no neutrality. Either you're cleaning or you're calcifying, and each day without action is choosing prison. And you learned about the domino effect. Your transformation inspires others, who inspire others, who inspire others. You're not just freeing yourself, you're contributing to collective liberation. Now only one question remains. What will you do with this information? Because information without action is entertainment. You can watch this, feel inspiration, intellectually agree, and return to life exactly as it was. And if you do that, nothing changed. You just wasted an hour hearing truths that didn't transform you because they didn't transform into action. Or you can choose differently. You can take this seriously. You can recognize this isn't just another interesting spiritual video. It's a calling. It's awakening. It's the moment you decide, Do I stay blind or open my eyes? And if you choose to open your eyes, you know exactly what to do. The protocol exists, the substances exist, the practices exist, the path is mapped. You just need to walk it. And here's the brutal truth that separates those who truly change from those who just consume content. Most won't do anything. Most will watch, agree, and forget in a week. We'll return to fluoridated water, toxic toothpaste, autopilot life. And 5 years from now, we'll be in the same place, maybe watching another video like this, feeling the same empty inspiration that never transforms into real change. Don't be that person. You're different. You got this far because your pineal still functions enough to recognize truth when you see it. And that means you still have a chance, still have a window of opportunity. But the window doesn't stay open forever. The longer you wait, the more calcification accumulates. The harder it becomes to reverse. The more apathy you feel, the more excuses your mind creates, until eventually the window closes and you become like everyone else who lives and dies without ever knowing what they could have seen. So don't wait, don't postpone, don't say, "I'll do this someday," because someday doesn't exist. Only today exists. Now, this moment, and in this moment, you can make a choice. You can decide your life won't be wasted in blindness, that you won't spend another day being manipulated because you can't perceive manipulation, that you won't die confused and be captured back into the cycle. You can decide you'll clean the gland, that you'll recover your vision, that you'll live as a complete human being, not as a diminished version, and that when your time to die comes, you'll exit free, conscious, prepared. That decision starts with action. Today, now. It doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be big, but it needs to be real. So here's what you do. You finish watching this video, and immediately, not tomorrow, not later, but immediately, you do one thing. One concrete action toward decalcification. Buy a water filter. Throw away fluoridated toothpaste. Order magnesium supplement. Mark practice time in your calendar. Anything. But do it now. Because if you don't do it now, while inspiration is still alive, you won't do it. And then, come back here. Leave a comment. Not for me, but for you. Declare publicly, "I choose to see. I start today." Because when you declare publicly, you anchor the commitment. You seal the intention, and something inside you changes. And then, in the coming days, weeks, months, continue. Follow the protocol. Do the practices. Eliminate toxins. And watch your life transform. Watch perception sharpen. Synchronicities explode. Clarity emerge. Freedom become real. And when you're seeing clearly, when you're living differently, come back here again. Share your experience. Not as evangelist wanting to convert, but as witness offering evidence it's possible. Because your testimony will inspire the next, who will inspire the following. And the domino effect continues. And if you want to continue learning, if you want more advanced techniques, if you want community of others on this path, subscribe to this channel. Because this here is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore, so much more to activate, so much more to see. But it all starts with decision, and decision is proven through action. So act, today, now, and begin the journey back to who you really are. Because here's the final truth, the truth that summarizes everything. You're not broken, you're not lost, you're not separated from the divine. You're just blind, and blindness is reversible. The gland that gives you vision is inside you right now. Calcified, yes. Blocked, yes. But not dead, never completely dead. And it can be cleaned, can be reactivated, can function the way it was designed to function. And when it functions, when you finally see, you understand, you were always free. You just didn't know. The prison was never real. It was illusion maintained by limited perception. And the moment you see through the illusion, you exit, not with struggle, not with force, but simply by seeing there were never real walls. And that's what decalcifying the pineal gives you. Vision that dissolves prison, perception that destroys control, clarity that makes you uncontrollable, unstoppable, free. That's the importance. It's not about having cool mystical experiences. It's not about impressing people. It's not about feeling special or enlightened. It's about freedom, real freedom, that crosses life and continues beyond death, that no one can take from you, that no system can control. that no manipulation can touch, and that freedom is available to you, now, today, in this moment. You just need to choose, and prove your choice through action. So choose, act, and be free. The journey begins now.